When my ex-husband's lawyer stood up in court and called me unstable, I kept my mouth shut. She told the judge that I once locked myself in the bathroom to avoid my own children. She made me sound like a monster. I sat there in silence while they dragged my name through the dirt in front of strangers, in front of my son. Then my 10-year-old Eli stood up from the bench behind me. No one asked him to. He walked straight to the front of the courtroom holding a small USB stick in his hand. His voice was steady when he said, "That's not true. Mom wasn't hiding from me. She was hiding from Dad. I have the video." For a second, no one moved. I couldn't breathe. Then the judge leaned forward and said, "Bring it here." They plugged it in. Everyone watched. Everyone heard. And after it played, the judge turned to Derek's lawyer, nodded once, and said, "Court is adjourned. I've heard enough." That was the day the truth spoke louder than lies. And it didn't come from me. It came from my son. Let me tell you what happened before that moment. Because if you're a mom, or if you've ever been gaslit so hard you started to question your own memories, you need to hear this. My name is Naomi Keller. I'm 33 years old, and for the longest time, I believed that keeping a family together was the most important thing a mother could do. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought staying quiet and being strong for my son was what love looked like. But I was wrong. Love doesn't mean silence. Love means protecting the people who depend on you, even when your voice shakes, even when you're terrified. When I first met Derek, I was 23, finishing nursing school, waitressing nights to cover rent. He was magnetic, funny, confident, ambitious. He said he admired how hard I worked. He made me feel seen. We moved fast. Everyone said we looked perfect together. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. At first, it was small. He'd joke about my clothes, say I was too sensitive when I asked him not to yell during arguments. He'd apologize, say he was just tired, that he didn't mean it. Then came the rules. Don't wear that, don't hang out with her, don't go out without telling me where you are. When I got pregnant with Eli, I told myself Derek would change, that the pressure was getting to him, that he just needed to grow up. But he didn't change. He got worse. The shouting became constant. The gaslighting made me question my memory. He would say something cruel, then deny ever saying it. I began to doubt myself, to walk on eggshells in my own home. I stopped inviting friends over. I smiled in photos even though I was crumbling inside. I told myself to keep going for Eli, my sweet, wide-eyed boy who had done nothing to deserve the tension that hung in the air like smoke. Eli was the only reason I stayed as long as I did. He was 5 the first time he asked, "Mommy, are you sad?" I lied and said no. I told him everything was fine. But he saw it. Kids always see more than we think. The breaking point came a year later. Derek had been out drinking. He came home angry, slamming doors, shouting about dinner, about money, about how ungrateful I was. I told him to calm down, that Eli was asleep. He didn't care. He backed me into the kitchen, yelling with his fists clenched. I grabbed my son from his room and locked us in the bathroom. I sat on the tile floor, holding Eli in my lap while Derek pounded on the door, calling me pathetic. I kept whispering, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. You're safe." I should have left that night. But I didn't. Not right away. I still thought I could make it work, that I could protect Eli and manage Derek. But Eli was watching. Every day he was learning what love looked like from the way his father treated me. That terrified me more than anything Derek ever said. A few weeks later, Eli gave me a drawing. It was a stick figure of a woman sitting in a box crying. Next to her was a smaller stick figure holding a heart. On the back, he had written, "I love you, Mom, don't be scared." I packed our things the next day. We moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't much, but it was ours. It was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in years, I didn't jump at every sound. I enrolled Eli in a new school. I started working longer shifts at the clinic. I felt like I could finally breathe again, but Derek didn't let go. He filed for custody, full custody, claimed I was unstable, that I was unfit, that I was mentally unwell. He hired a lawyer who made me sound like I was the danger, like I was the problem. They brought up the bathroom incident, twisted it into a story where I abandoned my son because I couldn't cope. They said I locked myself away because I was overwhelmed, unstable, unhinged. I wanted to scream, to tell the judge the truth, that I was hiding because I was scared. that I was protecting my son from a man who had spent years tearing me down. But I knew what would happen if I got emotional in court. I'd be the angry woman, the irrational mother, the unstable ex. So I sat still. I kept my hands folded. I looked at Eli sitting there in his little dress shirt, trying to be brave. I knew I couldn't let them destroy me in front of him. I stayed silent. I thought that was all I could do. But I didn't know what Eli had seen, what he had heard, what he had done. I didn't know that my 10-year-old had quietly recorded the night they kept bringing up, that he had saved it, that he had carried the truth with him, waiting for the moment he'd need it. And in court, when I thought I had lost everything, he stood up and gave it back to me. The courtroom felt cold, not just from the air conditioning, but from the weight of judgment in every glance cast my way. I sat there in my navy dress, hands in my lap, trying to look calm while my heart thudded so hard I thought people could hear it. Derek looked sharp in his suit, all confidence and clean lines, like the picture-perfect father, the same man who once told me I was lucky he hadn't done worse than scream. The same man who would smile for the judge and lie through his teeth without blinking. His lawyer, Amber Locke, was just as smooth, polished, practiced, deliberate. She stood tall in heels that clicked like a metronome on the polished wood floor, her voice steady and sharp. "Your Honor," she began, "we are requesting full custody of Elijah Keller. The child has been exposed to repeated emotional instability under Ms. Keller's care. We have reason to believe she poses a risk to his emotional and psychological development." She turned slightly, eyes skimming past me like I was nothing more than a nuisance in a chair. There was a recent incident in which Ms. Keller locked herself in the bathroom to avoid interacting with her child. That level of detachment is consistent with a parent experiencing severe mental distress. We have documented behavior patterns that suggest a history of emotional instability. I stayed quiet. My attorney had told me to stay composed, to let the evidence speak. But what evidence? The only story they had was a twisted version of a night I had survived. Amber looked at me then, her voice low but cutting. "She didn't call the police. She didn't report any abuse. That's because there was no abuse. What we have here, Your Honor, is a mother who panicked, locked herself away, and abandoned her son in a moment of emotional volatility." I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. I wanted to yell that I hadn't abandoned Eli. I had shielded him. I had protected him. I had done what I had to do because there was no one else to protect us that night. But I said nothing. I looked at my son instead. Eli sat beside my mother in the second row, his feet not quite touching the floor, hands gripping the edge of his seat. He was wearing the navy blazer we bought from the thrift store a week earlier. His hair was neatly combed. He looked smaller than usual, but his eyes were locked on me. I could see the worry there, the confusion, but also something else. Something steady. The judge turned to me. "Ms. Keller, do you have anything to say regarding the incident described?" I opened my mouth. I wanted to say 1,000 things. That I had held my son close that night. That I whispered to him to stay calm while the man on the other side of the door threatened us both. That I had no one to call who could show up in time. That my only option was to survive until morning. But I looked at the judge and saw nothing in his eyes. No warmth, no understanding, just the clock ticking toward a decision. "No, Your Honor," I said. My attorney leaned toward me and whispered, "We can fight the mental health claim. We can file a character affidavit." I nodded, but I could feel how heavy the room had gotten. The lie was starting to stick. Amber smiled slightly like she knew she'd just won a round. Derek didn't look at me. He sat still, smug, hands folded in front of him. Then the judge asked, "Is there anything else?" That was when Eli stood up. At first, I didn't realize what he was doing. He stepped into the aisle, one small hand clutching something silver and rectangular, a USB drive. "Your Honor," he said, his voice calm but loud enough to carry. "I have something to show you. It's about the night they're talking about. Mom didn't lock herself away from me. She was hiding from Dad. I recorded it. I thought someone might need to see it." There was a beat of silence. Not shock, not chaos, just silence, the kind that fills the room before everything shifts. The judge narrowed his eyes. "You recorded it?" Eli nodded. "With my tablet, I saved it." The clerk stepped forward. Eli handed her the USB without looking at Derek, without looking at me. Just eyes on the judge, steady and unafraid. In that moment, I realized something. My son wasn't just trying to protect me. He had been watching everything quietly for years. He knew more than I thought. And now he was ready to be heard. The courtroom wasn't ready for what my son had just done. No one was. Not Derek, not his lawyer, not even me. I was still frozen watching Eli hand over that USB stick like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like 10-year-old boys do that sort of thing every day. He turned around after giving it to the clerk and walked back to his seat. His shoulders were squared like he had just finished something important. My mother reached for his hand, but he kept his eyes forward. The judge didn't say anything right away. He took a moment, then leaned toward the clerk. "Let's see it," he said. My stomach turned as she inserted the drive into the courtroom laptop. The monitor flickered to life, and then we saw it. The grainy image was clearly from a tablet camera. The angle was crooked, but the sound came through loud and clear. Derek's voice filled the courtroom. It was unmistakable. He was shouting, slamming something, a door or a wall. "You're pathetic, Naomi," he said. "Lock yourself in there all you want. You always play the victim." You could hear me on the other side of the door breathing heavily, and then Eli's voice small but clear. "Mommy, are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby," I said in the video. "Just go back to your room. It's okay." "You're scaring him," I yelled from behind the door. "No, you're scaring him," Derek snapped. The clip went on for almost a minute, long enough to show the truth, long enough to destroy every lie Amber had tried to spin. When the clerk stopped the video, the courtroom stayed silent. Not a single cough, not a rustle of paper. I looked at the judge. His face had changed. The measured neutrality he had worn earlier was gone. He looked directly at Derek for the first time and then slowly turned to Amber. "I've heard enough," he said. Amber opened her mouth, but the judge raised a hand before she could speak. "Mr. Keller, your behavior on this recording is deeply concerning. This court takes the welfare of children seriously, and I believe it is in Elijah's best interest to remain with his mother. Court is adjourned." He stood up and walked out, just like that. No closing arguments, no second opinions. The lies had collapsed under the weight of a 10-year-old boy's courage. I sat there, stunned. My attorney leaned over and whispered, "That was decisive. You're keeping full custody." I nodded but couldn't move. My body felt like it had been holding tension for years and suddenly didn't know what to do without it. The bailiff told us we could leave. I stood slowly, turned around, and looked at Eli. He was still sitting there calmly, as if he hadn't just dismantled an entire legal strategy with one act of quiet bravery. I walked over to him and knelt down. "Where did you get that video?" I asked softly. "I recorded it that night," he said. "I used my tablet. I just knew it might be important." I swallowed the lump in my throat and reached for his hand. "You saved us," I said. "You saved me." He looked at me with those same clear eyes he had when he stood up in court and said, "You saved me first." Outside the courtroom, I held him tight. I don't remember what anyone else said. I don't remember the looks Derek and Amber gave us. None of that mattered. What mattered was that my son had seen the truth and chosen to speak it. That moment changed everything for me. I had been holding so much guilt, so much shame for not leaving sooner, for not being stronger. But Eli never saw me as weak. He saw someone trying to protect him, and when I couldn't speak, he did it for both of us. Later that evening, when we were back home, Eli curled up beside me on the couch and fell asleep with his head on my lap. I brushed his hair away from his face and finally let the tears come. Not from fear or anger, but from relief. We had been through hell, but we had made it out together. That night, I realized something even more powerful than the truth itself. Courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it sits quietly beside you, holding your hand, waiting for the moment it's needed most. The video replayed in my head all night, even after we got home. I couldn't stop hearing Derek's voice echoing through the courtroom speakers, raw and ugly. I couldn't forget the sound of Eli's voice either, clear and calm, offering proof when no one had asked him to. My son had done what grown adults in that courtroom didn't expect. He told the truth when it mattered most. After the judge adjourned, people stood frozen, unsure what to do next. The clerk started gathering papers. The bailiff called out that court was over. Derek looked stunned. His mouth opened like he might object, but no words came out. Amber Locke pressed her lips together and turned to pack her things. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak to them. I took Eli's hand, thanked my attorney, and walked out with my head up. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel afraid of Derek. His power over me had shattered in a moment that neither of us saw coming. It wasn't my words that had ended it. It was Eli's. The sun outside was warm on our faces. I crouched beside Eli near the courthouse steps. "You were brave in there," I said. "You didn't have to do that, but you did. Why?" He shrugged, then looked at me with complete seriousness. "Because they were lying and I didn't want the judge to believe it. You were scared that night. I remember. You were protecting me. I knew they'd twist it." I wrapped my arms around him, holding him tight. "You're the bravest person I know." Later that week, I got the official paperwork, full legal and physical custody. Derek would have supervised visitation, and only after completing anger management classes. I sat on my bed and stared at those pages for a long time. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I finally felt like I could breathe. The war was over. But it wasn't just a legal victory. The moment Eli stood up in court changed more than the outcome of the case. It changed the way I saw myself. For so long, I carried shame for staying as long as I did. I had convinced myself that leaving later made me weak, that enduring his abuse silently meant I had failed my son. But Eli didn't see failure. He saw strength. And when I couldn't find my voice, he gave me his. I think that's what moved the judge more than the video itself. It wasn't just the footage that exposed Derek's violence. It was the fact that a child stood up without fear to speak the truth in a room full of adults trying to bury it. I remember how still the judge became when Eli spoke, how quickly the courtroom shifted. Before that moment, I was losing. Not because I was wrong, but because I was quiet. The world often mistakes a calm woman for a guilty one. They assume if you're not shouting back, you must have something to hide. What Eli gave me that day wasn't just evidence. He gave me a voice that the system couldn't ignore. We talked more after that day. We talked about everything, what we had both been through, what it meant to feel safe, how to ask for help, how to say when something didn't feel right. I started seeing a therapist again. I enrolled Eli in counseling too. I wanted us both to learn how to live without fear in our bones. Healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens in truth, in connection, in naming the things that once tried to break you. A few nights after the court hearing, Eli asked if we could make pancakes for dinner. I smiled and said yes. He helped me crack the eggs and stir the batter. In the middle of pouring the mix into the pan, he looked up and asked, "Are we really safe now?" I paused for just a second and said, "Yes, we are." I meant it. That moment in court, the one that stunned everyone into silence, wasn't just the climax of a legal case. It was the moment my son stepped out of the shadows and became part of the story. It was the moment he showed me that I hadn't failed him, that he had been watching, learning, growing stronger even when I felt like I was barely holding it together. And it was the moment I realized that the strength I had tried to hide all those years didn't go unnoticed. My son had carried it with him all along. We didn't celebrate the court win with balloons or cake. There was no party, no social media post, no victory speech. It was quieter than that. The victory came in the way Eli slept through the night without waking up from nightmares. It came in the way I could finally leave a light off without fearing what waited in the dark. Peace doesn't announce itself. It just slowly starts to settle in. In the days that followed the hearing, everything felt a little surreal. I had spent so long preparing for the worst that I didn't know what to do when the storm actually passed. I had imagined every outcome, except the one where my 10-year-old son stood up in court and turned everything around. People talk about resilience like it's a trait you're born with. I used to think that too, but now I know it's something that's built, piece by piece, choice by choice, moment by moment. Eli built his, I built mine, and we built it together, even when we were surrounded by silence and fear. One afternoon, a week after the ruling, I picked Eli up from school. He ran up to the car with a drawing in his hand. It was simple, Just a house, a stick figure, mom and son, and the sun in the sky. He had written 3 words across the bottom in big block letters. "We are safe." I kept that paper. I folded it neatly and put it in the top drawer of my nightstand, not because I needed proof, but because I needed the reminder. Not every battle ends in a courtroom. Some continue in the quiet healing of ordinary days. Some show up in therapy sessions, school drop-offs, and Sunday mornings with pancakes. Derek didn't reach out after the hearing, not to apologize, not to argue, not for anything. I expected him to try, but he didn't. The conditions of his visitation were strict, and I had legal protection now. The difference this time was that I wasn't afraid anymore. I had learned what it meant to take up space, to speak clearly, to trust myself even when others tried to bury my truth. I started writing again. Just little things. Journals, letters to myself, notes I kept in the margins of books. Writing helped me process what I had endured, but more importantly, it helped me remember who I was before the silence set in. I wasn't just a survivor, I was a mother. I was a protector. I was someone who chose peace when it would have been easier to break apart. Eli began to thrive. His teachers noticed it first. He raised his hand more, smiled more, asked more questions. He made friends. He invited one of them over for a sleepover, and when I heard him laughing from the living room, I sat in the hallway and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I finally saw what freedom sounded like. We talk about breaking cycles, but rarely do we see the moment it actually happens. For us, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was the quiet moment in court when a boy stood up, told the truth, and gave his mother the strength she had forgotten she had. Looking back, I used to carry shame for not leaving sooner, for not shouting louder, for being afraid. I don't anymore. I did what I could with what I knew. I protected my child the best way I knew how, and when the moment came, he protected me right back. I tell this story now not because it ended perfectly, but because it ended honestly. I want other women to know they are not alone. I want mothers in courtrooms, mothers in silence, mothers in fear to hear what I'm about to say. You are not unstable for breaking under pressure. You are not unfit because you locked a door to stay safe. You are not weak for keeping quiet when the world didn't feel safe to speak. Your strength isn't measured by how loud you fight, but by how hard you love and how far you'll go to protect your child. And sometimes, when you least expect it, that child will stand beside you and show the world what strength really looks like. This is our story, and we are still writing the next chapter, together, safely, in peace. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been through something similar or know someone who has, I hope you'll share it. Someone out there might need to hear that they're not alone, that their story matters, and that the truth has power. Please like the video if it resonated with you, and drop a comment below. I read every single one, and your words matter more than you know. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more real stories, raw, honest, and told with heart. Thank you for being here. Stay strong, stay grounded, and never forget, you are allowed to speak, and you are allowed to be believed.